Hey, welcome to Our Defining Moments. I'm your host, Mary McClements. In this podcast, I talk with people about the split-second moments in their lives that sent them in directions that they never expected. From the woods of Vermont to the streets of San Francisco to the Camino de Santiago in Spain, you may be astonished by the chain reactions these moments have had not only for my guests, but for those around them. Hello, welcome. Today in Our Defining Moments, I get the honor of speaking to someone who recently ran in the Vermont primaries for state representative. Merrick Modun is an activist who firmly believes in the power of youth voices. Merrick was raised in Montpelier, Vermont, where growing up gay catalyzed his desire to help others and make systematic changes in his community. What's a little different about Merrick compared to most of my other guests is Merrick is 17. He's 17 and he ran for state rep. Merrick, welcome. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mary. And yeah, so as you just said, I'm a 17-year-old. I recently ran in the Vermont primary for state representative from one of my two house seats in Montpelier. And yeah, that was a really interesting experience. I learned so much.
Before we jump into your truly impressive flight to run for state rep, can you talk a little bit about who you are, whatever feels important?
I'm going to be a senior at Montpelier High School. I'm a member of Montpelier's school board, and I'm a member of Montpelier's Complete Streets Committee, which is essentially street safety back in Montpelier. So I'm really big on community service, helping just improve and really try to address the issues that are going on in my school community and my city community, and just really trying to make things better for as many people as possible. And in addition to that, I'm also a runner. I run cross country. I run track. Yeah, I love to hang out with my friends. I love to socialize.
So as you were listing the things that you're a part of, I'm thinking, do you see yourself as a typical teenager, whatever a typical teenager is?
Well, that's a great question. And I mean, I don't know what a typical teenager really is. I would definitely say I'm a little different from some of my peers. I've really made it my mission to have an impact and have a positive impact.
I have two teenagers and they're lovely, lovely people, but they're not necessarily trying to make at least a conscious effort to positively impact their community, their school community, whatever it might be. So I see that as being a little bit different than a lot of teens. And I hate to clump people, I hate to clump teens and they're this or they are not this. But
right.
You kind of seem like an anomaly, right? So I don't know you really well, but I'm impressed. And I'm curious.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you must be told that all the time.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, especially over the course of this campaign, there have been a lot of people who have reached out via email or just who have come up to me and said, this is really cool that you're doing this and that you're trying to provide a different perspective for people who aren't always and haven't been represented in elected positions, but specifically our state house.
Yeah. I love that people are coming up to you and saying, thanks for doing this, or, I really appreciate that you're doing this. What do you think your peers think about you running?
Well, a big part of my campaign what part of my campaign was really trying to reach out to my peers and get them involved in it. I would say that they're all pretty supportive of the campaign and of having potentially younger voices in the state house. But yeah, so I really tried to engage them. I really tried to invite them to events that the campaign was having, such as honkin' waves or just door to door. Yeah, I really tried to bring younger people with me and make them a part of the process. And so I think that's a huge issue within our society right now.
I agree. It is. Us adults can be really dumb and not involve young people and not ask them what they think. And it drives me bananas. And I want to talk about that a little bit more later. What was the honkin' what?
Honkin' waves. So essentially
it's waves. Nice.
Yeah. So essentially it's just it's like a campaign event where you stand on a busy intersection or street corner where there's lots of cars going back and forth. And you hold up your campaign signs and just wave them around and try to wave at people and get as many honks as possible.
Oh, I love that. Sounds really joyful. Like you'd be cheering when somebody honks.
Oh yeah, we are. And it's a nice little energetic event to try and get people excited
Yeah. Oh, I always honk. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you in a little bit about when you went to register to do this, but what do you think other lawmakers think, the potential people that you would work with?
Well, I mean, I made it as well a big point to try and talk to lawmakers as well, at least a few of them, to try and, get their support as well. Because I think that in order to win, you have to, obviously, in order to win, you have to have a broad range of support, not just from one group, but from multiple groups.
Yeah.
Specifically, why I even decided to do this was because through my internship with a local Montpelier representative, Mary Hooper, who was retiring, through my internship through that, I really was pushed to run for her position after she said she was retiring because of all the inequities that I witnessed through that internship in the Vermont legislature, as well as just the disparities between certain age groups that I think should really be amended, shall I say.
That's a good word. What other word might you use for that? Completely slaughtered?
Well, no, not that, but like lifted up perhaps, like lifting up those age groups or perspectives, or not just age groups, a variety of perspectives into the legislative body that is making decisions over our daily lives. So lifting up the historically underrepresented voices, that's been a big part of why I decided to run.
Nice. And I can't wait to talk about your defining moment. But first, I was checking out your campaign website. I love the pictures on there of you. You look, I don't know, like, it's like, of course he's going to play, like, you're going to be this person. Like, you just, like, there's kind of like a politician look, but you had kind of that, but more just this authentic feel. So I'd like to read the issues that you wanted to tackle, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So there's some pretty big issues. They are climate change, affordable housing, something that barely exists in Vermont, workforce, and the fact that our brave little state is losing our workforce because of the cost of living compared to our average wages, reproductive rights and equality, education, childcare and paid leave, healthcare, and gun control. So I read these, and even though these are no less than any other candidate might have and feel passionate about, I'm always surprised by the enormity of them. And maybe it's because I have judgment about what young people can accomplish. Maybe it's because I don't ever believe that politicians really can do all that they hope to do if elected. Do you feel as though folks ever outwardly doubted your campaign and the issues you feel passionate about?
So yeah, as a 17-year-old, I would say that I've always been the underdog in this campaign, just by nature of that. But that's also been a big strength. In addition to being perhaps that long shot campaign that a lot of people might view it as, it also gives people, I think, a lot of hope, or just gives people an idea of what if. And what if that young person win the election or be in our state house and be providing that perspective that we haven't seen really all that much before.
Yeah.
I would just say, I guess, to wrap that thought up, while there certainly were a lot of doubts, I would say that I really tried to show that I'm not just a 17-year-old. I can knowledgeable of the issues and really passionate about, getting things done for our community.
Yeah.
I tried to show that and demonstrate that through making sure that my campaign website was very put together, very free, shall I say, hopefully at least. And which is why I'm going door to door every single day, that I'm really trying to make sure that I am listening to the community and hearing what they have to say, and then providing my perspective on whatever issue they might be facing.
We're going to take a short break now to hear from our sponsor, Take Passage Coaching. This is still Mary, and I happen to be the owner and lead coach of Take Passage Coaching, and I'm thrilled I asked myself to be my own sponsor. Seriously though, Take Passage Coaching is a trauma-informed, transformational coaching practice that supports people who are ready to move from uncertainty and doubt to the ability to clarify what they expect for themselves. At Take Passage Coaching, I work with clients to help them look at their negative thoughts not as the messy parts of themselves to stuff away, but how to use those thoughts as fuel I know you've probably heard all of the promises before, and you may have been working on your stuff for ages with not much progress. But one reason why Take Passage coaching is different is that I celebrate all of your messy parts, the parts you're embarrassed about, the things you may consider weaknesses, and I help you to see them that they are all gifts and they are all strengths. So whether you're someone who has experienced trauma, and if you're human, you have, or are ready to do the scary things in life that you've been telling yourself you can't, Take Passage Coaching is ready to help you with the transition and change that you want. So go ahead and reach out to takepassagecoaching.com to book a free exploratory session and take good care. You went door to door. You went and knocked on people's door, like real life.
Yes, every single day.
Oh my God. I just love that. I love that. Was there any one particular door that conversation ensued and it stands out to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There were so many interesting doors. And I would say that almost every single door was different from the one before, just because, while they might have been related issues, like climate change was a very common one, they always had a different perspective on that issue, which I just thought was just so fascinating. Talking to people every day, listening to them. I think it's what any elected representative should really be striving for. And yeah, but I mean, if I was to say one door specifically, I really liked when I accidentally stumbled across the door of Representative Warren Kitzmiller, who is the Montpelier state representative, who was also retiring. And yeah, that was so fascinating. He came out and we just chatted about his time in the legislature. He gave me a lot of advice for what the legislature is like. And
oh, nice.
Yeah. And then he ought to never give up the fight. It was a nice little closing thought from him.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How encouraging.
And what was really so touching about that was just 6 or 7 days later, Warren actually, unfortunately, passed.
I had forgotten about that. Oh my gosh.
I take a little comfort in the fact that I might have been the last person he gave some advice to, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm getting chills. Right. So he's like, never give up the fight. Mm-hmm. And then he passes.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I mean, does that feel odd? It feels good. It feels...
I mean, it's sad for sure, since Warren was such a distinguished member of the Montpelier community. But it's really strange, actually, looking back on that, knowing that I saw him one day and then just a few days later, he wasn't around anymore.
Yeah, I know. So. I know. Like that's, I'm sure there's a whole entire podcast about death and what it does. Yeah, it's so hard for us to get our brains wrapped around.
Yeah, and I mean, I could absolutely talk and think about that all day, but...
Yeah. Well, I'm just surprised people answer their doors. You know, I feel like people just don't knock on doors anymore and people don't answer their doors anymore. You know, it's like so different than when I grew up.
It certainly is a bit of a weirder time today, but I'm glad that I guess, remnant of an older time still remains, because knocking, trying to directly engage people, I think is really important to any representative's job, to anyone who wants to be an elected official. And I mean, there were definitely a lot of people who either weren't home or didn't answer their doors. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised too, just by the amount of people who did open their doors and by the warm reception that followed by almost every single one of those.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think on the whole, people want to see young people succeed. You know, they're psyched to support young people who are making an effort to make changes. So I'm not surprised that there was warm reception. So going back to the issues that you were really focused on, if you had to choose, or you could just choose one that you were most passionate about, that you wanted to work towards most, which one would it be?
Well, I mean, there are so many issues, but if I had to pick one issue, it would be climate change, 100%. And that's just because we continue to see the effects of climate change every single day through more days of 90-degree summers, through droughts across most of our country.
Yeah.
Just through extreme weather events like hurricanes, and just, it's not those events itself, it's the frequency of those that are just happening more and more.
Yeah.
So I think climate change is absolutely making us face an existential threat, more so than perhaps any other issue. And I think if we really don't address it substantially, thoroughly, we're not going to be in for a good position just a few years down the line.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was actually I get this I'm on an email list. It's called the Atlas. I think it's out of the University of Colorado, and it's all new innovation, whether it's automobile or climate or medicine. And I was looking through it this morning, and there was something about taking core ice samples that up in, I can't even remember where it was, but they are saying that these core ice samples might be 500 million years old. And in the background of this picture is clearly where a glacier used to be. And it's just rock. And like, it's kind of if I'm being more observant, it's these subtle things that really snap me into place. Like, oh my gosh, that place 10 years ago was many feet deep in ice. And now it's all just rock. All right. I am ready to hear about your defining moment as it relates to your choice to run for office.
Alrighty. So I would say my defining moment, I was meeting with one of my teacher advisors who later became a big advisor on my campaign. This was back in May, early May, I would say. We were meeting in just this little small room at the school, and we were sitting down chatting about whatever we were chatting about, educational matters. Of
school
course,
stuff.
About some work I was doing on the school board and looking for her input on that. Either way, we were also talking about the legislature, because she was basically who managed the whole internship with Representative Mary Hooper. So I was giving her a bit of an update on that as well. And then she just sprung on me the fact that the other Montpelier representative, Representative Warren Kitzmiller, had planned to retire. And she said that she saw that in the recent newspaper article from the Bridge.
And this is with your intern or your teacher that said Warren was going to... Okay, go ahead.
We were talking about my internship at one point in that conversation, but then it shifted to, Warren's retiring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in that moment, I wasn't thinking about, I am going to run for the legislature. I actually was thinking, I wonder to run for the legislature to replace Warren. I actually hadn't entertained myself as a possible candidate at that point.
You didn't.
But I know now that was the moment when I had decided I was going to run, perhaps subconsciously, but that vacancy was now on my radar. And I know that was the moment I could pinpoint as to when I had decided to run, even though I hadn't.
You didn't quite know it yet.
No.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I love that our defining moments so often are not apparent when they're happening. But when you look back, you're like, oh, actually, no, it was that other thing. So go ahead.
The moment where I actually decided definitively to run was when I was driving back home in my car. I think I was going back home after school one evening. And it was a few days after this. So I'd kind of forgotten the fact that Warren was retiring.
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly popped back into my brain while I was passing the Richmond exit. And I was like, I wonder what the laws are about young people or someone under 18 running for state legislature.
Yeah.
Because I had remembered that Vermont was one of the few states that was pretty lax with their age restriction laws. Like, wasn't there a 14-year-old a few years ago who ran for governor? So I wonder if there are any laws for a 17-year-old running for a local office in my town.
Mm-hmm.
There are no laws on age in Vermont for statewide offices like governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and all those local offices like state representative and state senator. So no age limit at all for any of those offices. The only offices where there are age limits are federal offices. So U.S. congressman from Vermont, that one has an age limit because it's written in our Constitution, the United States Constitution. And to be a U.S. senator from Vermont, there's also a constitutional age requirement for that as well, along with president, as I'm sure we all know. But,
is there an age cap in Vermont?
No, there isn't, which I mean is probably one of the reasons why our legislature is disproportionately older individuals.
Yeah, I think that is part of it. And I think that there haven't been enough, I don't want to say enough, that sounds judgmental, but there haven't been many young people who have started to pave the way for other young people, as you were mentioning before. So, the more there are, the more people may think, I could do that also. So when you went to register with the state to run, was there a reaction? I don't know. Like, did you go up to a counter and say, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and somebody Like, what was their reaction?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a reaction, but I mean, even to get on the ballot, I had been researching beforehand. Okay, what do I need to do? And it turns out I need to get 50 signatures from anyone who lives in Montpelier, since this was the jurisdiction where I was trying to represent. So I just had to get 50 signatures from anyone in Montpelier. Doesn't matter if they were Democrat, Republican, or so forth. I had to get them to sign this little petition. And then along with some other documents like, do you really live in Montpelier? I had to bring those signatures to the town clerk's or the city clerk's office at Montpelier City Hall. And when I got there, I was met by the city clerk who I gave my documents to him. And he meticulously just went through them, scanning them, looking at, okay, does he have all the requirements or whatever?
Is this legit?
Yeah. But I mean, he didn't know how young I was at the time. That's the funny thing. So how he found out that I was 17 when he was looking up registered voter. So the Vermont Secretary of State website, which registers candidates, essentially, it's like a little online filing system. They don't account for a candidate who's an unregistered voter. So there was nothing on so when he went to go register my candidacy, he couldn't because he didn't even see a slot because I wasn't a registered voter, and that was a requirement of that online system.
It's not a requirement to run, but it was a requirement to the system. No. Okay.
So it was a bit of an error, I guess, between the actual Vermont laws and the Vermont Secretary of State website.
So the software hadn't caught up to the law. Like they hadn't created the software to accommodate somebody who wasn't old enough to vote yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so much as an update because these laws have always been on the books. It's more just like they didn't even consider the fact that someone who's a voter.
Oh, that says so much. That little piece there. It's like there's this subconscious expectation that no one under 18 would run. Right. And that I feel like translates so much to how many folks see teens or see, there's like this really interesting connection there of what we expect or don't expect of our young people.
What's more is after I had left the clerk's office, went home because he said all my paperwork was good, I got a call from the city clerk, John Odom, a few hours later saying, we have a problem with your candidacy. You're not a registered voter. And then we just went through that whole process of, well, there's nothing in the Vermont Constitution that says I have to be a registered voter or even 18.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let me talk with the Vermont Secretary of State. So,
oh my gosh.
I guess got on the phone with him, and then I raced back down to the city's clerk office because it was like an hour within the closing time to make sure that I got registered or whatever for candidacy. And then I got there. He said he got off the phone with the Vermont Secretary of State. The Secretary of State said it was okay, but they would have to manually put me in a different way.
Do you think that was a wake-up call at all for them? Like,
by the time the next election cycle rolls around, they'll have fixed that little error in their system.
So good. Not only are you running, you're bringing to light that systems aren't in place for younger people to run. So I love that.
Absolutely.
So telling. So what was it like running a campaign while you were in school and hopefully, having fun as a young person and doing all the things that you like to do? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, the campaign, I guess, kind of started right as school was ending.
Oh, right. It was May.
So, I mean, the registration filing date was May 26th. I think that was when I filed. I think I filed on the last day it was available because I had to get some last minute signatures. But either way, so it was near the end of May and I only had about 2 more weeks of school.
Okay.
During that time, I was kind of just organizing the campaign. I wasn't really campaigning yet. Like I was getting the website together. I was getting a base of supporters together, a core group of supporters, advisor.
And were all of these people around your age?
No, they were actually pretty different ages. Like perhaps my biggest campaign advisor was actually someone who was probably, I think he's in his 70s himself. He was actually really much older but yet he provided a really great perspective that I definitely had to be considering as well if I wanted to be a representative at all.
I love that it was a multi-generational campaign team. I just love that.
Yeah. And I mean, my campaign manager was one of my peers at school. So she was my age. So she had another great look into what young people are facing. And she was a great organizer and was a great help. So, yeah.
Nice.
And then I also had a lot of campaign help from one of my other teacher advisors, the one who initially told me that Warren Kitzmiller was retiring.
Who was kind of the catalyst of all this in a way. I mean, like, I think you probably had somewhere in your mind, like, I'm really interested in politics and making change and bettering my community. Yeah. But that teacher kind of planted the seed. Do you want to give her some props?
Yeah, I mean, no, of course. She actually encouraged me to run even before I had decided. She was like, you should run for this seat. So, and I definitely think her words were big encouragement for me to actually do it.
That really strikes me. Like, I feel like I'm having a hard time swallowing. Like, it just takes one person sometimes to change the world, or to change to change someone's perspective, or to let someone, or to help somebody feel more confident, or whatever it might be. And I love that she planted that seed for you.
I mean, there were a lot more people who helped out through the campaign events and so forth. And I mean, big thanks to all of them. But I couldn't walk away from this thought or podcast without saying that my mom was also a really big help.
That is really good. Brownie points for you for giving mom some credit. That's great. Oh, so good. So what was the hardest thing about running your campaign?
Oh, that's a great question. The hardest part about campaigning, I would say certainly just navigating through all the systems that you have to figure out while being a candidate, specifically campaign finance. So confusing.
Oh, yeah.
Really very accessible for, I would say, most people to understand easily. The fact that you have to open a separate campaign bank account.
Oh my gosh.
With no actual specific steps on how to really do that. Just a little
figure it out.
A little footnote saying that, like, make sure to keep your finances separate. Like, what is that? First of all, but second as well.
So just so people know, you have a new kitten, and the kitten is really curious about what's going on here, and it's really sweet. I keep getting like close up of the kitty eye. So going back to that, the process is not easily understandable or accessible, which again says so much. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It seems like it's going to really keep people from doing something like this, even if they have all the skills and all the, passion.
I would definitely say that was super confusing, just having to navigate all the inaccessibilities. The actual act of going door to door, by comparison, was really not all that hard.
Yeah.
You listen to people, essentially.
Brave.
I mean, no, going door to door was another matter, just because you have to kind of work yourself up with doing that. But also, I'm always pleasantly surprised by the fact that the vast majority of people are very receptive.
I worked for Greenpeace a million years ago and went door to door, and I did not have the nicest reception. So I'm so glad that you did.
Really?
So, yeah. No, that's a story for another time. So how did your running affect other people in your world, in your community, in your family?
I would certainly say that a lot of people around me were really inspired by a young person running, and by my running, I guess, as an extension of that. Once again, we haven't really seen a young person or that many young people run for state legislature or elected offices in general. I mean, there've been a few, but not a huge amount. So when there comes along someone that is really passionate about the issues facing young people, I think a lot of people found it really inspiring, and something that we certainly need more of.
Do you consider yourself a role model?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I don't know if I'm one to really go around saying I'm a role model, I'm an inspiration, but I would say that when people have reached out to me saying that I really appreciate you doing that, I think that says more than what I could ever say about my role model status or my inspiration status. It's really the people who, reach out to you and show that instead. That says more.
So I'm guessing folks are dying to know, how did the election go?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we did not win the election this time, but not mean that we lost. We got nearly 600 votes in our small community in a five-way race.
Five-way race. Wow.
Yes. It was a very split vote, but we still managed to get nearly 600 votes.
I mean, are you totally psyched about that? Like, right, it's hard to lose, but oh my gosh.
Both. Like, I'm both disappointed and I'm also really hopeful because I think 600 votes is a great start for the next time any young person runs for state legislature. And if that's me or someone else, I don't know. But I would love to run for office again.
I love that, of course.
We didn't do it this time, but I think maybe next time we definitely could. Because now desensitize people a little bit to the idea of a young person running, that they would be more receptive to that idea the next time.
Yeah, yeah. Is there something that you wish adults asked young people more about? Like, what questions are out there that you're like, God, I wish adults were just more curious about this?
Simply just the question, what do you think about this?
Oh.
If there were more adults asking young people, what do you think about climate change? Or what do you think about gun control? Or so many issues, I think that would be really insightful into how the next generation of politicians, of workers, of community members is thinking.
Yeah. And it's such a simple thing. What do you think? What do you think about this? Why do you think adults don't engage that question with young people more? Why do you think we're just like, young people are? What do you think that is?
It's two things. One, it takes effort to reach out to people, and not every representative or elected official really wants to do that. And two, it is the idea that, young people aren't old enough to hold, or I guess aware enough to hold smart perspectives, which I absolutely disagree with, because there's still it's not just that they're still a part of the whole, which is our communities, but it's that they're coming into a community, into a world. And if they don't feel engaged, then they're less likely to feel hopeful and to try and engage in the future in that process, which I think is a huge issue.
So, right. So it has like a bigger ripple effect that you engage young people who are growing up in a community. It's going to benefit the community more because they feel more engaged. But a lot of young people need that invitation. You didn't really need that invitation.
No, but I would say that that's just because my interests have always been really about communities and politics and how can I solve problems or how can I make an impact. But if there aren't those people who are as, I guess, inclined and attracted towards politics, then it becomes an issue of disengagement, perhaps, especially among, because if they don't feel valued, then why would they?
Yeah, I agree. How do you think adults, political adults, however you want to describe it, how do you think they could reach out more?
I would say, certainly maybe by holding listening sessions, trying to just really get input from younger people. Going to schools, perhaps, places where young people might hang out, but also talking to like representatives, perhaps having more student representatives in places of or organizations that are making decisions. And that's why I'm really glad the school board reintroduced their student representative slots, which I mentioned earlier. If there were like maybe non-voting student representatives or even voting student representatives on city council in Montpelier, that could be a way to engage young voters.
Yes.
So it's one thing to talk to people, young people specifically, and it's another thing to really try and engage them in decision-making processes. And I think that those young people can be engaged in those processes by having positions specifically for them.
Yeah.
Or by showing that young people can run for those traditional offices anyway and get close to winning or win in general.
Yeah, I love that. And, I strongly believe that we learn best through experience. Learning from a book is one thing and works for some people, but I truly feel that most people learn best by doing, by experiencing. And so if more young people had the opportunity to experience these challenges and experience working on political teams, the more they're going to learn and the more they're going to be able to talk about it to their peers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's your big dream in life? You have a big dream?
I would say my big dream is just to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
Walk away from this world. I just want to know that what I did during my time was beneficial for as many people as possible.
Oh, well, you're doing a really good job so far. Anything else that you want to share? Do you want to give some encouragement as like in ways that you got encouragement? What else do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I would say a little bit of encouragement that I can give is that even if you don't think that something is possible at first, that if you can make it a possibility, then you're doing a lot more than just something for yourself. So you might be showing future people or future even generations that something you did is possible for them as well, even if it might have seemed not possible for them at first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really being proactive and trying to find those areas where there are disparities or those areas where there is not a lot of representation for certain people. If you can really try and find those areas and then really try and ensure that that fact is changed, then I think a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like your defining moment had an immediate impact, and I think it's going to be impactful for years to come. And you just never know how one person's defining moment may create another defining moment and another defining moment and another defining moment for other people.
I hope so, for sure.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident about it. Merrick Modun, you have been inspirational to me. I am so in awe of your courage and bravery. And I love the fact that you have gone door to door. It's so personable. And I think that people need that more in their lives. People need more inspiration and want more hope. And I feel like you have provided that for so many people. Well, you're pretty humble.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for saying that and for having me on your show today. It's been really great to share more about why I ran and my defining moment that came along with that, and to hopefully provide a bit of inspiration to people moving forward.
Well, the honor is mine, and I have found myself choking up a few times. So you've had an impact on me. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your time. And I cannot wait to interview you in the future about other things that you've accomplished and just jumped right into. So thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime. Yeah, I'll go back to playing with my cat.
Your kitty. What's the kitty's name?
We named her Godzilla.
Signing off with Merrick and Godzilla. This has been Our Defining Moments with Mary McClements. I'm back next week with more stories of moments in time that changed someone's life forever. Please rate and review the show and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a defining moment and want to share, head over to the Our Defining Moment website at ourdefiningmoments.com and click on Share a Moment. I'm always interested in people's stories, and I may feature you on the podcast.